In the late 1600s, the King of Spain ruled one of the largest empires on earth. Millions of people lived under his crown. Armies fought in his name, ships carrying gold-crossed oceans for his kingdom. But the king himself could barely control his own body. He struggled to chew food. He struggled to speak clearly. He was constantly sick. And despite having unlimited wealth and power, he could not produce an heir. No enemy had poisoned him. No war had broken him. This had been happening long before he was born. Because for generations, his family kept repeating the same decision over and over: marry inside the bloodline. And without realizing it, one of the most powerful dynasties in human history had begun creating its own disaster. For hundreds of years, Europe had an obsession: royal blood. Today it sounds strange. But kings did not think like ordinary people. To them, marriage was not romance. Marriage was territory. Marriage was survival. A wedding could achieve what thousands of soldiers sometimes could not. A king could gain land without fighting, create peace without signing treaties, expand an empire simply by marrying the right person. And that strategy worked. Actually, it worked incredibly well. No family proved this better than the Habsburgs. The Habsburg family became one of the most powerful dynasties Europe had ever seen. Their influence spread across Spain, Austria, parts of Italy, the Netherlands, and large sections of Central Europe. Their success became so famous that people created a saying: "Let others wage war. You, fortunate Austria, marry." And for a while, that strategy looked genius. Every marriage brought more territory. More territory brought more power. More power brought even more marriages. The machine kept growing, until something strange started happening. Not wars, not assassinations, faces. Royal portraits from later generations began showing unusual similarities. Long faces, large jaws, distinct facial structures appearing repeatedly across family members. Eventually it became known as the Habsburg Jaw. Researchers studying historical portraits and family records later found evidence suggesting repeated intermarriage may have amplified these inherited traits over generations. But the jaw itself was not the real problem. The real problem was hidden, and nobody living at that time could see it, because Dina would not even be discovered for centuries. Then came Charles II, the final Habsburg king of Spain, and the moment you look at his family tree, you realize something was deeply wrong. Normally a family tree spreads outward. Parents become grandparents. Grandparents become great-grandparents. The branches keep expanding. Charles's family tree almost looked broken. Branches repeatedly bent back into each other. Relatives kept reconnecting with relatives, generation after generation. His father and mother were not distant relatives. They were uncle and niece. And this was not some isolated event. It had happened repeatedly across earlier generations too. By the time Charles entered the world in 1661, he inherited far more than a kingdom. He inherited centuries of accumulated genetic risk. From childhood, Charles experienced serious health problems. Historical records describe him as physically weak and frequently ill. He reportedly struggled to walk properly as a child. He struggled to speak clearly. Eating itself became difficult because of the size and structure of his jaw. People around him often worried about his health. Imagine ruling a global empire while your own body constantly feels like it is fighting against you. Now imagine the pressure on top of that. Because kings did not simply need to rule. Kings needed heirs. Without heirs, dynasties died. Without dynasties, kingdoms became unstable. Without stability, wars often followed. And that became Charles's greatest problem. Because despite multiple marriages, he never produced an heir. Suddenly the future of Spain became a giant question mark. And all across Europe, powerful rulers began paying attention. Then Charles II died in 1700. And almost immediately, Europe started moving toward chaos. Because Spain was not a small kingdom. Spain controlled enormous territory and wealth. Everyone wanted influence over what came next. Political tension exploded, competing claims appeared, and eventually Europe descended into the War of the Spanish Succession. Millions of lives became connected to a chain of events that had quietly started generations earlier. Think about that for a second. Marriage decisions made by royal families had eventually contributed to conflicts involving entire nations. Now there is something important to understand. History on the internet sometimes turns this story into a joke. Reality is more complicated. Not every child born from related parents develops severe health problems. Human genetics is far more complex than that. But modern science shows that repeated close family marriages over many generations can increase the chances of harmful inherited traits appearing. The people making these choices did not know this. They were not trying to destroy their families. They believed they were protecting them. Protect the dynasty. Protect the crown. Protect royal blood. From their perspective, they were making intelligent decisions. History simply gave them consequences they never expected. And maybe that is the strangest part of all. Because this story is not really about kings. It is about people. Throughout history, powerful groups often become obsessed with preserving themselves. They close the circle. They trust fewer outsiders. They protect what they already have. And sometimes, the walls built for protection become traps. Kings controlled armies. They controlled nations. They controlled the lives of millions. But there was one thing even the most powerful rulers on earth could never control: nature. And nature has never cared about crowns.